As of 2024, we have a massive issue with men not being in the church. And when you look at the state of culture, which has also infiltrated its way into the church and church culture, you can understand. When you look at the way church is set up, you go in and you do some praise and worship, which I love praise and worship, by the way. And then you sit down and you have somebody preaching to you while you're sitting down. It's still very important. It's an important part of church culture, and I wouldn't remove it. But when you look at the way men are in general, we're not really wired to sit down and listen to someone talk to us for an hour. And that's just one thing. You look at church culture in general. I mentioned how worldly culture has kind of infiltrated its way into church culture. You look at the rise of feminism and how it's pervasive, it's everywhere. And I will say there has been a resurgence in the last couple of years that I've been seeing of people wanting to come back into church, looking to God, and I think it has a massive link to feminism and the red pill, and people kind of just seeing where the world is going, and they don't want anything to do with it. So when you look at the rise of feminism, I'm not going to go back to the 1900s where it was actually proper feminism. I'm talking about 21st century feminism, third, fourth wave feminism, whatever it is. The one that basically tells men, you're useless, you're toxic, you're not worth anything, all of this, right? There's been the rise of that, which has caused men to just be demoralized. We've grown up in a very feminine society, and a lot of spaces have been taken over by feminism, including the church to some extent. But then now you have what's been happening in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years, but particularly the last 5 years, the rise of the red pill, your Andrew Tates coming in as an antidote, let's call it, an overcorrection of feminism, right? And I like to call it meninism, it's literally just male feminism. It's got the same debaucherous, anti-Christian teaching lines, right? I'm not going to get into it, honestly. I've gone into it too many times, but you get the red pill, right? And it's teaching you all these things that are just anti-Christian, and they're just very worldly. And now you have sort of these just two places that us as Christian men, right? Us as Christian men, we don't want to be a part of that. So I guess that's why there's a lot of people who are looking at that and they're I don't want to be, definitely don't want anything to do with feminism. I don't want anything to do with the red pill. And then they'll be this is why, they'll say this is why religion is good, but obviously our faith is more than just a religion. It is relationship with God. But that's when they get curious about looking at the church and looking to get a relationship with God, because nothing else in the world is sufficient. So now you have this, and that's why a lot of men are coming back into the church. But what I will say is that there is still that culture, especially and I'm an evangelical, but if you look at Protestant churches, evangelical churches, and the typical popular, let's call it the popular churches, right, with the airy-fairy preaching, it's very, very feminine. I mean, look at I know they're false preachers, but look at your Stephen Furtick's, the most popular preachers we have nowadays, and again, they are false, and the Bible does warn us about false prophets, rising up in the end times. But you look at popular preachers, you look at the popular church message, the image of the church in general. You look at, as I said, your Stephen Furtick's, your T.D. Jakes, your Joyce Meyers, Kenneth Cook, all of these people, right? The kind of messages they preach, the ones that actually do go popular, it's a very feminine style of you go girl, you can do this. There's a lot of talk about dating and relationships. It is very feminine centered. So that's why there's an issue of men not being in the church, and the men that are coming back to the church are embracing a biblical masculinity, which of course I agree with it. The Bible is the source of all authority. But do you look at the particular denominations they go towards? These people who go to Catholic denominations, which don't get me started on Catholicism. Then you get people who go to take a more Calvinist view. People go to the Anglican Church, Orthodox, and even Islam. There are a lot of people who go to Islam. Again, Islam's a false religion, but you get the idea. People are looking for something, and they're not getting it, in the world. And when they do come to the church, they're looking at these more hard denominations. And again, you don't have to get too much into theology. As long as you stay away from Catholicism, I think you're fine. There are certain issues we have within denominations, but honestly, they aren't big issues unless, as I said, it's Catholicism. But anyways, I think that's why we've had such a resurgence in men wanting to come back to the church, but why we've had an issue of so many men not being in the church, because it's got such a feminine vibe to it. But what I would say to all the men watching this, right? I mean, first of all, like the church being feminine isn't a reason to reject God, like that's dumb. But I would call to say that maybe this is where we're called to like step in, right, and create spaces for men to come and have like conversations like these, right? Because we can't just again shy away from the church because it's very feminine now and you're not feeding God, because again, God is real whether or not the church culture is going the way you want it to. And I think there is this culture we're embracing online of like biblical masculinity, and I encourage a lot of all men to do that actually. Like I've seen plenty of people speak about this. The world flourishes when you have strong godly men who are leading society. I mean, that's literally how the biggest, like the most successful societies got brought up, right? In biblical masculinity. You look at the core teachings of the church, of what let me not say the church, the core teachings of the Bible and the core teachings of Jesus, right? About loving your neighbor as yourself. The whole chivalry culture, like that's good for society, like standing up for people who are distressed. That's what Jesus was preaching, right? Caring for people who are struggling. That's biblical masculinity. And obviously we reject feminism, modern day feminism. It's absolutely ridiculous. We reject the red pill, absolutely ridiculous and unbiblical. We have to embrace a biblical masculinity, and we have to go to church, right? And I think there's so much excitement in the fact that it's a lot of young men who are looking for this. Like if you look at like the millennials and like the older generations, I mean, it depends what house you're brought in, but a lot of men weren't going to church. Like you'd have the mothers taking their children to church, but then the father staying at home for whatever reason. But we have a lot of young men who are really searching for God, and I think there's a space in the church for us to step in and actually become leaders and embrace that biblical masculinity. Bring a space for people like you and me, who are growing up in this world where we're being told by feminists that you're evil, you're toxic, and then you're getting told by red pill people that if you're not rich, jacked, and whatever, you'll never be loved, and all of this ridiculous stuff. And we just go back to the Bible and we teach what Jesus taught us, right, and become the men God called us to be. I think it's important for us to embrace that. Now I want to talk about biblical brotherhood, right? As I mentioned, now we have this issue of the world telling us all these things, and then now we have men trying to come back into the church, but then there's also a very feminine vibe, and there aren't many like masculine leaders in the church. There's an issue of loneliness, and I think this is just a worldwide problem for Gen Z and I can only think about what Gen Alpha and all of them are going to go through, but Gen Z in particular, we are a very, very lonely generation, the most connected generation, but the most lonely generation. And obviously, this video is pertaining particularly to men, and I think the reason for that is that men's spaces have been taken over by like feminism, and kind of been kicked out, and like men don't have like anywhere really to go, and the brotherhood is gone. And I think just to emphasize the importance of this, I'm going to read from Ecclesiastes 4 verse 9 to 12, and I'm reading from the King James version, which I don't normally read from the King James version because I can't understand what's going on in there, but it's the only hard copy Bible I have, but it should be fine. So starting with verse 9, it says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to pick him up. Again, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Though one may be empowered by another, 2 can withstand him. And a threefold cord is not quickly broken. And I think in there, I like verse 10, where it says, for if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up when he falls. That's something, again, I've just laid the land of like what society looks like now, and how men are like lost. If you have biblical brotherhood, you actually have a place where you can talk about like specific topics like these, and topics that you're really struggling with, and you can take it from a biblical perspective, right? None of this nonsense that we're being taught by the world, and you get to grow in those relationships, and they're very important in the Bible continuously. And I've just read from Ecclesiastes the importance of that brotherhood. And interestingly enough, the book of Ecclesiastes, it's a very depressing book, bro. It really is. Like, it's Solomon after he's gone through everything. Like, he's tried living a life where he's indulging in the debaucherous parties, and he was like, nah, that's not for me. He tried living a life of leisure, being fed grapes while he's lying down on the beach. That was not for him. And then he tried like chasing career, like getting as rich as he can. And he was like, no, that's not for me. And after all of that, he comes to the book of Ecclesiastes, right? He's like, everything is meaningless, right? And in the end, he comes to the conclusion that only God is enough, and God is enough above all of these other things. And isn't that such a great depiction of the society we're living in now? A depiction of how people are feeling. You know, we've gone to all these things in the world. You know, Jesus said, you know, if you drink the water of this world, you will be thirsty again, right? We've gone to this world and it's just not quenched our thirst. And now we're looking for, you know, what's in the Bible. And Ecclesiastes in this particular passage is preaching about the importance of, you know, having biblical brotherhood. And I think it's important that we embrace that. And I'll talk about like my particular experience. This year is really like the first year I've had like, you know, biblical like Christian friends. Because before I've had like last year, the last couple of years, I've had friends, you know, that were, they were either like not Christian, or you know, they were like lukewarm Christians. And you know, we weren't having like these kinds of conversations. We were kind of having self-improvement conversations on like the outskirts of Red Pill, but you know, not in Red Pill, because you know, like the Red Pill is just, yeah. Let me not go into that. But this year is the first year I've really had like biblical brotherhood, and I can't explain like how much it helps, you know, how much it keeps you going, and having these kinds of conversations. I've been having, dude, I'll have like conversations about like theology, like, bro, I was not having those conversations last year, and that's just out of the interest of it, not because, you know, oh, you know, this theology is going to save you. I mean, yes, there's a particular theology that, you know, believing like in the Trinity, the core tenets of the Christian faith. But dude, we're arguing about like Calvinism, and you know, like which one is getting too much into tradition and which one is too like airy fairy, like things like interesting things about the church, and also just obviously like issues we have from a biblical perspective. Like it really helps. And I think if you're like somebody who's watching this thinking, you know, man, I'd really like to have that, I mean, it's a perfect segue. You know, I have a podcast with my friend Darian. It's called the Jesus Convo podcast, and you know, we just talk literally about Jesus and the topics that young adults will be going through from a biblical perspective, of course. We're going to be doing connect groups. We're calling them TJC Connect, something like that. But we're doing online connect groups. I think right now it's every Monday at 6:30 Central African time. And literally what we're doing, like we have a Discord. I do have the link in my description. Like I'd encourage you to join it if you are looking for like that biblical brotherhood. Where we'll go and you'll just join on Discord, and we'll just chat. Like literally, we'll see how we will do it, because from the way I've seen connect groups are, you know, from just going to church, from different churches and checking them out. Geez, I'm stuttering a lot. Just from going to different churches and checking them out, I've noticed, you know, you will prepare something. Like there'll be a word, there'll be some worship, and then there'll be like the leader who will like prepare questions to ask the people. We can do it that way, or we can go and we can just chat. But I think the idea is just to bring community, like to people who are struggling with this. But yeah, you guys let me know what you think of the topic. I think, you know, it's something we're really struggling with, and it's something we really need. But yeah, make sure you hit subscribe to join the community. Join the Discord if you are interested in, you know, the weekly connect groups. We might even up it to like 2-3 times a week, depending on, you know, how much in demand it is over time, of course. But yeah, let me know what you think of the topic. Make sure you subscribe, join the Discord. Until next time, see you guys.